This is Stacy Campbell, and this is my case study for evaluation of personnel. So the setting for this case study was pretty simple. It was just a school. It doesn't really address what type of school it is, public or private. I assume it sounds like a public school. It doesn't tell us grade level, and again, I just kind of was assuming it was similar to the situation that I'm in, which is a high school. So in my mind, that's kind of what I was picturing. And the setting is a classroom as well as the school's office. So the people who were participating in the case, there was only two that they really distinctly talked about. One was the teacher, her name was Mrs. Stevens, and the other one was the administrator, the building principal, and he didn't have a name. They just often referenced him as the principal. Again, assuming he was a male. So just to kind of sum up what happened in the case study, Mrs. Stevens was up for her annual evaluation. She was a non-tenured teacher in her third year of time at the school. And so this evaluation was at the point of recommendation for tenure. So the principal has to decide whether or not to renew the teacher's contract. Continually saw inappropriate classroom management as well as lack of student engagement in the classroom. It appeared that the principal had some expectations on what sort of activities the students were doing, not just the teacher up and talking the entire time, and he continually was in her room making observations but wasn't seeing these changes. After a little bit of kind of back and forth between himself, the principal decided not to renew her contract based on the ineffectiveness that she has as a teacher. Ms. Stevens was not okay with it. She denounced the evaluation. She did not accept it, and then she threatened to take any sort of legal action that she could against the school if they did not renew her contract. So the legal and ethical questions or implications of this tenure is not really a law in my state anyways, and that's kind of where I was going is we like to it was in 2014 is when the state said, okay, no longer is there tenure for educators, and then it kind of went back and forth in the courts, and I think it was 2018 the state Supreme Court said, okay, we can't change anything. Everything they did was legal as far as legislation goes. And so it still kind of remains as not a law. But what tenure essentially is saying, and if it was a law in our state or if it isn't in other states, it's just simply giving a due process. Okay, so probationary or non-tenured teachers can be dismissed without any reason. We know that. Teacher tenure is simply a policy that restricts the ability to fire teachers, requiring a just cause rationale for firing. So you can't just fire a tenured teacher because you don't like them or there was some maybe some differences that had happened. And so you have to have just cause for that. In which just cause, you have to have a lot of documentation and stuff like that. And so in my state, each district, since we don't have tenure, each district is allowed to set a policy, and we have ours called a fair dismissal policy. It does say that if you are at your fourth year, any sort of termination has to have your just cause. And then typical tenure agreements lay out steps and documentation necessary to dismiss a tenured teacher. So it's not just something that you can take lightly and just be like, okay, well, I didn't agree with some of the things you were doing and you're tenured, and so here's kind of the reason I'm letting you go. You have to show that improvement plan and how you have worked with that employee to try to better them as an educator. To me, tenure is more an ethical issue than it is a legal issue. So if we look at tenure, and a lot of people say, well, it protects the teachers. Well, yes, it really is set so that good teachers are guaranteed a job. They can't just have a disagreement with an administrator and be let go. In turn, people like to say it protects the bad teachers, and it doesn't allow districts to dismiss teachers who are not performing effectively. And again, that's not true, as long as they follow the steps appropriate to making the successful break of their contracts. So if you have the documentation and those improvement steps and they're not followed, then you have the ability to dismiss a poorly effective teacher. So my synthesis for this is the implications of a disgruntled employee with respect to the evaluation process. So what sort of impact is this employee's differences going to have on the process that's at hand with respect to evaluations? So the facts of this case are pretty cut and dry. So Ms. Stevens, she scored a low evaluation. She was not okay with it. According to the case study, her evaluations indicated below average professionalism and an inability to motivate students. The administrator it looked like he took several times to go into the classroom and give feedback, but the suggestions were not accepted by the teacher. So after continued observations, and the principal just finally had to decide that he was not going to recommend her for renewal of her contract. At the end of the scheme here of a case study, the teacher threatened a lawsuit for unfair evaluation, which, under the non-tenured agreement, that's fine. She can threaten it all she wants to, but really the district has nothing to worry about. I did address this here in the future a little bit more detailed. So the priorities with this case study, we needed to look at things like student success. So is this teacher an effective teacher? Are they making it? Are the students succeeding? Are we seeing test scores? Like, is she maybe not doing it to your level as an administrator, but yet is being still effective? So we need to look at some of those sort of ideas. Possible tenure. So what happens in the future of the building if we allow this teacher to continue? What happens if I do go ahead and let her go? Are we going to be able to fill that position? I know that's kind of a bad way to look at it, but I mean, it is the reality of the game, especially in the district that I'm at. And then how is this going to impact our stakeholders? What sort of effect will this have on our student body, not necessarily just the students in the class, but the student body as a whole? Other teachers, am I going to lose teachers because of this disgruntled teacher? And then how does that look on your administration? Are parents on the outside looking in saying, hey, you're not doing anything, my child's not getting an education in this classroom and you're not doing anything about it? There's a lot at stake with this. And so being upfront and understanding what the insides are, I think, is a really good thing. And actually, I put that on the lessons learned too. Document everything. If you have some sort of educator who you feel like is not being an effective educator, you need to make sure that you have all of the information documented down and have a plan in mind of where you'll go with that. Also addressing stakeholders. If parents or teachers come in and say, hey, I've been in this situation where I'm not okay with the way the teacher is teaching or handling situations, so I go to my administrators, and they have always been very upfront with me, but yet reserved on what they can tell me for legality issues. But hey, we're doing what we can. Maybe you can go in as an educator and try to, see if you can build a relationship with that teacher and try to help improve their teaching styles. And be upfront with intentions. I know he said in the case study, the principal did, he went into the classroom but didn't really say why he was there. I think if you're open and upfront and say, hey, I'm here so I can observe you and then help give you suggestions on ways that we can try to improve your classroom management and your management of your students and getting them to participate. I think being open and being honest is really a good key here. So, options of what to do in this scenario. Option one is to give into what the teacher wants. What she wants to keep her job, renew her contract, and grant her tenure, because she's on her third year, so the next year she would be granted her tenure. Option two, kind of more on the other side of the extreme of things, is to terminate the staff member without just cause. She's not doing well in the class, in the classroom. So that's your other option. One kind of in the middle option would be to continue the teacher's contract, renew the contract, but put her on a continued probationary period in which you need to see those improvements, or, essentially she's going to be put on an improvement plan her very first year. So looking at the pros and cons of these different options. So if I were to renew her contract, the pro is you're not having to deal with any sort of implications from firing her. There's no litigation, and I understand the idea of, she can't put anything out there. She doesn't have any grounds for that. But this just saves face, and that's not going to happen. The con is the teacher gets her way. There's no guarantee that she's going to improve her classroom management. And so, you're not improving the school at all. Okay? If I fired her, then the pro is you're setting a standard for teacher expectations. Teachers know, hey, I can't get away with being lackadaisical when it comes to my classroom. I really have got to push these kids and set that standard, or meet that standard that the school has set. The con would be, maybe she could find the right lawyer who is going to bring up some sort of litigation against the school for that unfair termination. I don't know. If we did the continued probation, the pro with that is the teacher, you have that position filled. You no longer have an empty position. You have it filled with a teacher who, already has some time underneath their belt. And then the teacher's going to get the help that she needs. So, that's kind of the win-win of this situation. But the con is there's no guarantee that the teacher is going to improve. You might be having this same battle, except next year you have tenure to fight against. And so it becomes a little bit more difficult to just terminate the teacher. Also with that, no one's being held accountable. If you continue to allow that teacher to teach the way she does, other teachers are going to see things that way, and it really just messes with the harmony of your school. So in my best opinion, the option that I would choose would be to terminate the staff member without just cause. Not saying any reason as to why you're terminating their contract, or why you're not renewing their contract, but just simply saying we're going to go a different route. She's probably going to know, but you are, as an administrator, not going to be held liable at all for any sort of wrongful termination with that. So how I would implement this is informing the staff member of your choice, calling her in, having a sit down. I know in the case study it seems like the teacher has already done that, or the administrator has already done that, but just saying, hey, this is my choice. She can sign it, not sign it, doesn't matter. The process will still continue like it should. Submit the evaluation to the central office with the recommendation of non-renewal. And then inform the district administration of her threat of litigation from the staff member. I know it's not going to go anywhere, because to me it appears that the administrator has taken all the correct steps, but just understanding that, hey, she did threaten it. If it happens, I just want you guys to be aware of it. Here is my documentation of things that I already have. Here's the things that I've seen, and so forth. So I know in schools today, most districts have walkthrough tools that they are using for professional development, but as I talked to my administrator, everybody knows they're using it for evaluative purposes as well, even though they might tell you it's not. But just the same as if they walked into the room to grab a kid, if the classroom is unruly and not well managed, that's going to be documented somewhere. Because it's what they have seen. So evaluation is something that's ongoing. It's changed, I'm sure, in the last 10, 15, 20 years. But I hope that it has changed for the better and is really helping those good teachers become great teachers, in turn, which will help student success.